If we could wave a magic wand over this situation, what would you want different? Help them identify what they really want. And then ask, what's one thing you're willing to do this week to move towards getting that for yourself? Because nobody's going to do this for you. This is on you, man. You're going to create your own life. What kind of life do you want? What are you willing to do? How can we support? And when they make a new choice, they're honored for their courage and their willingness.
Welcome to Mic Check, the next chapter, where we highlight nonprofit leaders making a real difference. I'm Kristin Guglielmo, and today I'm excited to sit down with Joe Sigurdson. Can you say that for me?
Sigurdson.
How do you say that?
Sigurdson.
Okay. Chief Success Officer at Boys to Men Mentoring Network. For over 2 decades, Joe and his team have been creating life-changing programs that connect boys with positive role models, helping them grow into compassionate, responsible men. Joe, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Kristin.
So, Joe, let's start with at the beginning. How did Boys to Men Mentoring get started?
Man. I had some extraordinary parents. They were both activists. They were juvenile probation officers when they met. And my dad took a job in San Diego in 1953 running a residential foster care facility. And then my dad taught at USC. He taught criminal justice administration and sociology at USC for 14 years. And this was during the 60s and early 70s. And my parents were real activists, and we went to a lot of civil rights rallies and anti-Vietnam War protests as kids, as families. And we were exposed to a lot, and parents instilled in all of us, to those who are given much, much is expected. So I come from a family of servant leaders. My sisters are teachers and run nonprofits, and my brother helps me run Boys to Men nonprofit. And anyway, extraordinary parents. I went from boy to man pretty early. I fell in love with my older sister's best friend, and she is 5 years older than me. And I've known her since I was 10. And when I fell in love with her, I was 18. She was 23. And I moved to San Diego, married her, adopted that 2-year-old, and I went from boy to man very early. And, there was no roadmap for me to be a father or to be a husband. I was this 18-year-old kid that was into the man's world. I had a union job running a printing press at night, and I was doing landscaping during the day, and I was busting ass to keep my rent paid and my family afloat. And I was the youngest guy on the swing shift, and I wanted to fit in, and all those guys drank, so I started drinking with them. And I had never drank before. I never did any drugs or drank in high school. I was a straight arrow. And anyway, I kind of, in short order, was alcohol dependent, and the alcohol led to drugs, and the drugs I couldn't afford, so I became a drug dealer. And in very short order, I became a bit of a nefarious criminal. And my wife, now I've got 2 kids. We've got a son, and I'm not a very stable guy. I'm a crystal meth addict, alcoholic, in the deep end, doing nefarious criminal activities and hating myself. And she didn't know what to do with me. So I watched her and my 2 kids pulling away from the curb on her way to her mother's house. And I'm in the kitchen window crying, pouring beer down the sink, going, what's wrong with me? And called my dad and my sister. They said, I think you might be alcoholic. You need to go to Alcoholics Anonymous. And my dad, being the kind of dad he was, he said, hey, I need to stop drinking too. I'll go with you. So I don't know whose dad does that for them. But anyway, we went to AA, and, when I got to AA, I met guys there that they didn't give a shit where I'd been or what I had done or what my backstory was. They just wanted to know what I was going to do to clean up my mess and how was I going to move myself forward, and suggested I do these steps, and said, and we'll take you through them. So I learned at 28 what unconditional love and acceptance and encouragement look like. I learned at 28 that what the things that I did don't define who I am. I had lost sight of who I was. I had a very strong base to return to, and by applying the principles and the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, I got to become a reasonable human being again. In my journey into recovery, I did this men's retreat, and it was super powerful, and it was framed as a rites of passage. It was an initiation into manhood, and it was a lot of like fourth and fifth step work. I don't know if you're familiar with the steps, but take a searching and fearless moral inventory of yourself is the fourth step, and fifth step is admit to ourselves, God, and another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. So it's a very revealing weekend. And so work that I had done one-on-one with a sponsor, I was doing live and in person with 60 guys witnessing, and it was wild. And it was very transformational. And I started really connecting some dots in my life that, where I was making sense out of the behaviors based on, some of the things that happened to me and some of the choices I've made and some of the traumas I experienced. And I'm like, wow, this is great. I could have used this at 14, not almost 40. And there were other men on the weekend that felt the same way. And we thought, we should be initiating boys at an age appropriate time, not men initiating men. And there was a calling in 1996. There was a calling from a guy named Ken Druck, who is a pretty renowned psychologist, author, really accomplished guy, saying that the governor, he cut out a newspaper article, and the governor of California had allocated like $35 million to have 200,000 mentors by the year 2000. So this was in 1996, okay? And then it was agreed that we, as a community of the Mankind Project, that's the men's organization that we should start a mentoring program. And my dad, not only did he teach at USC, but he ran a lot of diversion programs during the 60s, the Great Society in, Crenshaw District, Santa Monica, Inglewood, Torrance. And he had also taken a job as the executive director of Father Flanagan's Boys Town. So he had a lot of experience, and he had ran Boys and Girls Aid Society. So he had a lot of experience, and he was a juvenile probation officer. So I said, Dad, you'd be perfect for this. And so he said, okay, whoever wants to do this, let's meet at Joe's on Tuesday. And that following Tuesday, there were 8 men in my kitchen, at my kitchen table, and we just started brainstorming, what's a mentoring program? What are we going to do? And we talked about sponsoring a Little League team or a Boy Scout troop or starting a computer lab or tutoring. I said, well, all that already exists. Why don't we do something that we're uniquely qualified for? Why don't we initiate them? Why don't we create a 20th century rites of passage experience for 13, 14, 15-year-old boys? And so then for the next 2 years, we researched that, and we met with anthropologists and psychologists, and we wrote protocols and policies and procedures. And in that time, my dad passed away, and he kind of passed the mantle on to Craig McLean, who's my best friend and co-founder of Boys to Men, and so Craig and I carried that vision and that path forward. And in June of 1998, we did the first Boys to Men weekend, and here we are. Well, I don't know, 25 years, 29 years later. And 29 years later. And the model that we've created has been replicated around the country, around the world. We do in-school group mentoring. We have a staff of 16. We have 12 of those 16 are our facilitators. We have an army of 100 volunteer mentors, and so we create teams of our guys are on point. The leaders of the circles, and then supported by the mentors. And we send teams into the schools every week, and we sit in circles with young men, and we listen, accept, and encourage. That's what I learned in AA. We meet them where they are. We're not there to judge them. We're not there to tell them what to do. We just meet them where they are and ask open-ended questions like, how's that working? Is this what you want?
Your story is very powerful. And I'm sure that, helps young men too, because we always have to share our experiences where we didn't make the right choices, and we all are going to do that. And, we can't judge each other because we're all going to screw up, and a lot of people may not accept that they screwed up.
So much of what happens in the circle is based on what the men's authenticity, the men's vulnerability, the men's ability to go back to that wounded 13, 14, 15-year-old and talk about what happened to him and how he felt and the choices he made and the price he paid for what he did. And the boys hear the men being honest and transparent and vulnerable, and it creates that liminal safe space like we do in AA. We share our experience, strength, and hope. We're sharing our experience, strength, and hope with the boys, and they feel safe, and they'll step in and they'll just start talking about what's happening to them right now and the choices they're making and the price they're paying. And that's where we meet them and ask those questions. Like, if we could wave a magic wand over this situation, what would you want different? Help them identify what they really want. And then ask, what's one thing you're willing to do this week to move towards getting that for yourself? Because nobody's going to do this for you. This is on you, man. You're going to create your own life. What kind of life do you want? What are you willing to do? How can we support? And when they make a new choice, they're honored for their courage and their willingness. And then they're offered support, which is usually a text message. And then the following week, we'll do a round of accountability to check in to see if they've done what they said they wanted to do to move towards becoming the men they want to be. So that's the ongoing in-school process. And then when a kid is ready, when he's identified the blocks, the beliefs, the traumas, the events that are sabotaging his success and are challenges for him, we have a 16-acre ranch up on Mount Palomar, and we invite him up for our rites of passage experience. We call it the Adventure Mountain Weekend. And now, instead of having an hour in circle, we've got 3 days to take a deep dive into those things and really create a roadmap to the man they want to be by identifying everything that's in the way, what their commitment is to move through it, what are the action steps that they're willing to take to fulfill that commitment, and what does the other side look like? If you did these things, what would be freed up in your life? If you did these things, how would your life be different? If you did these things, what would you get? And so they literally, have to look at their part in how they're co-creating their reality. And we tell them, there's two things. It comes down to two things. One is, what do you need to take responsibility for? Or two is, who do you need to forgive? And if you can take responsibility for your part, the world's going to meet you halfway and get you over the finish line. And if you can find, grace and forgiveness to the people that have harmed you, betrayed you, hurt you, and you don't have to carry around those resentments. We talk about forgiveness being a selfish act, not to let them off the hook, but to let us off the hook.
Forgiveness is about how it's going to make the person who needs to forgive feel, not the person who you're forgiving.
Yeah. So, and when they do all that, we're writing everything down. We're literally creating that roadmap for them. And then they get a copy and we get a copy. And now we go back into the school circles and we just start reminding them of what their commitments are and asking, like, where are you in your journey? What have you accomplished? How many of these things have you knocked out? And we're looking at it like, you said you needed to talk to your dad. Have you called him? And
that's amazing.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah,
it's so unique. It's such a unique approach and so hands-on and mentally, engaging with these young men who probably haven't expressed their feelings.
Yeah. Well, it's comprehensive long-term commitment to transformation and change. And we don't do and here's the other thing, it doesn't all happen at once. And it's not some linear path to nirvana. There's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. We're going to get back into those same environments. We're going to revert back to old behaviors. And if we don't have a community that's going to hold us accountable and say, dude, this. I'm confused. This has nothing to do with what I heard you say you wanted to do on the mountain. This has nothing to do with what I heard you say you were going to do last week. What's going on? What do you really want? What kind of a man do you want to be this week? What are you willing to do different? How can we support? So it's an ongoing process, you know?
Yes. You're being that, in Weight Watchers, we call it body buddy, but this is way more important. You're that, well, maybe when you're swimming, the buddy system.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's great. So what is one of your biggest wins, that you've had? I mean, I'm sure you've had a lot of
We've had
them.
a lot. We've had a lot.
Few that you can think
okay.
about.
Okay. I mean, look, we've got a lot, but I tell you, there were these brothers, twin brothers. Okay, they were fraternal twin brothers. They weren't identical, and they were pissed. They were being raised by their grandmother. They they hadn't seen their dad for like 7 years, and they're in middle school. They're 13 years old, and their mom's in prison, and their grandmother's raising them, and they're pissed, and they're acting out, and they're violent, and they're angry, and grandmother doesn't know what to do with them, and they came to a boys to men circle, and they talked about their anger and what they're doing, and I said, "Good for you, man. Good for you. You feel better? You feel better when you do those things?" Yeah. Yeah. Okay, good. What's the price? What's the price? What happens to you? You do those things, and then what's the price? How do you feel about yourself? How does your grandmother feel about you? How do your teachers feel about you? Look, dude, it's not fair. You guys got screwed, okay, for sure. But you're screwing yourselves now, and what kind of a man do you really want to be? And a lot of times what happens is the role modeling that they've had becomes the antithesis of what they want to be. They learn what they don't want to be.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I had a young woman living with us since she was 16, and she was turning 17, and she just moved out, and she was an angry young woman living in a terrible area. Her mother's, asking her for money instead of helping her. I got her driver's license. We did this together. And the woman that she is now is completely different than the woman that she was when I met her. She's not angry. She knows how to control herself.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you what happened with these boys. Okay. Mm-hmm. So one of them went into the Navy. The other one got an academic full ride scholarship to what's the historically black college in Atlanta. Morehouse. He got a full ride scholarship to Morehouse, and
that's amazing.
He majored in theology. So Jeremiah graduated from Morehouse with a degree in theology. Was a junior youth pastor down in Dallas, and then got an opportunity to be a youth pastor in Los Angeles, and came back to the West Coast where we reconnected. And then the pastor of the church that his grandmother and his brother were raised in is like 84. And he stepped down, and he is now the senior pastor of the church he was raised in. Now, Isaiah, his twin brother, went into the Navy. He reached out after about 4 years. I wrote a letter of recommendation for him. He went into Naval Officers School after being an enlisted man for 4 years, and now he's an officer in the Navy. I couldn't tell you his rank. I wish I could. But anyway, so
the difference you've made in all these men, it's amazing.
Not me. Look, I was part of the formula. There was a bunch of guys that showed up for these guys, But the difference is like showing up. Showing up is 90% of the game. And there were a bunch of men that were able to pour into these young men with different beliefs, different angles, different face, different experiences, different backgrounds. So the Kelly brothers are a big win. But in the same breath, I've got 1,000 other stories, of guys There was a kid, Brandon Maldonado, was very angry. He was homeless. He was living in a shelter with his mom and a little brother. He was angry at school, lashing out. Teachers were afraid of him. He got, it's just so disarming when a kid's pissed off and you validate his anger and say, dude, I don't blame you. I'd be pissed too. It's not fair, because they're always so used to defending themselves,
Yeah.
and to have somebody come along.
That sucks, and you don't deserve that.
Yeah. But when they've got men that are their allies and they come alongside them and stuff. Anyway, that young man came to the weekend and he was talking about how angry he was with his mom and what he wanted to do with his mom. And I said, hang on, Brandon. You love your mom? Yes. Yeah. She loves you? Yes. Yeah. And your mom's really struggling? Yes. Okay. Do you want to continue to be part of the problem or do you want to be part of the solution? It's up to you. But, you're 14 now, and you're stepping into your manhood. What do you need to do different? If you want to be part of the solution, what's that look like? He said, I can get a job. I can start helping my mom. Anyway, he just made the decision to be part of the solution and stop blaming her and start coming alongside her. And as soon as he did that, we were up at the ranch. I said, okay, who has work for Brandon around the house? Who's got a project for Brandon? And guys just said, Brandon, dude, I'm building a deck. I need some. I'm going to be doing landscape, and it's not like we hired him and did. We came alongside him. Yeah, I had him to the house all the time, working on projects. In the yard. Taught him how to detail a car. Like the stuff that. So,
and I'm sure they love being right by your side, doing it and learning.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, and that kid is like 30 now. And he owns his own restoration company. He bought property down in the Guadalupe Valley, south of Tecate, in the wine country in Mexico, and he's building an Airbnb.
Yeah,
and his mom lives with him. And he got her a job. He got a job at a hospital. My brother does hospital services. Got him an interview. He got a job as part of the engineering team, and then he got his mom a job doing transportation inside the hospital. So she was transporting patients from, to get X-rays and to get surgery, whatever,
pushing them down to the radiology.
I mean, just somebody
Incredible.
Showing up consistently and giving a shit and checking in and following up and going, what do you need, man? How can I help? That just not doing it for them, but empowering them, encouraging them, honoring them. It's great to get a win, but if there's nobody there to celebrate that win and to encourage you and push you to keep going, we all need that. That's our human nature, and this is what we're doing in our circles. We're building communities, and we're building those communities based on our human experience, based on our grief, our loss, our pain, our frustration, our anger, our humanity, and it's safe and it's non-judgmental, and we get to express and say things that we don't get to express and say, and then we're held to account. Okay, so how's this going to go down? What do you want to happen? What's the ideal outcome? What have you got to do to get that? How can we support you? It's about empowering them to have agency over the direction of their lives, but not walking that path alone.
Just keeping them, reminding them, reminding them, okay, well, what are you doing? Are you doing it? You doing what we said you needed to do?
It's so wild. It's here we are. We did this 100 Wave Challenge, and out of the blue, there were guys that were involved in the program 10 years ago that were in their mid-20s. They showed up to cook and to clean and to help at registration. I had a kid from the very first training in 1998. He's 43 now, married, 3 kids. He shows up with his surfboard and a check for $1,000. Says, hey, can I do this thing if I give you $1,000? I go, come here.
Boy, we need this in an area. Well, I'm sure there's tons of areas, but we need this area
we
around.
Need this everywhere.
I know, but some areas, they're just more dangerous, or they're coming from harder starter point. starting point.
Exactly. And so, in San Diego, we've got 38 school partners in 13 school districts all over the county. So we've got kids from affluent communities, and we've got kids from impoverished communities, and we got, middle class, upper middle class, lower middle. We got the gamut. But here's the thing. None of that matters. Because when we get down underneath the Salty Crew brand, or whoever we want to project out to the world, who we want them to see, we get underneath that and we start hearing about the pain, the frustration, the discourse, the abuse, the abandonment. It's no longer, it's the human experience. It's not the upper middle class experience. It's not the black experience. It's not the brown experience. It's the human experience. And we're sharing our humanity. And when a young black kid is talking about the pain of his parents breaking up and how he's blaming himself, and a Hispanic kid and a white kid can come up and put their hands on that guy's shoulders and going, I know how you feel, man. I went through this last year. I went through this 5 years ago. Sucks. You're not alone. I don't know. There's just not a lot of, and we're doing it in school, and so like the level of emotional energy, emotional risk taking that is going on in school, and the tears that flow and the love that gets poured in, and then these guys leave and go to math. It's hard. It's a miracle, and our school partners are seeing incredible shifts in boys' behaviors, and it's worth it to them to have them do an hour a week at Boys to Men as an elective. And then, so I don't know.
That's incredible. Who teaches the course? Is it all different people, or do you have one person that goes in?
We have a team of 12 facilitators that are all trained in active listening skills, social emotional learning skills, empathy, compassion, multiculturalism. And then we offer those same trainings to our mentors. All of our facilitators are mandated reporters. We're registered with the state. We've got psychologists and educators and counselors on our board of directors that are overseeing and validating the trainings and the work we're doing. We're collaborating with the National Conflict Resolution Center to learn restorative justice and conflict resolution skills. So we've got and then, there's an intuition that just comes with it. There's a breed of cat out there that's just got massive skills for this kind of work. And we got 12 of them on our team. They're freaking brilliant, They're just a special breed of cat. And their lived experience, their capacity for, empathy and compassion and meeting the boys where they are. A lot of people don't have that. They just think the kid's screwed, and it's like, I can't help you.
Well, yeah, I mean, and my next question was going to be, how do you keep your team mentors and community engaged? But that's how you keep them engaged, because they don't want to walk away from that.
Well, that, and then we also, look,
these children,
we do, we bring in outside facilitators, we bring in outside training, for the team to keep, sharpening our swords, and also, self-care. Once a month, we have a psychologist sit down with the entire team, and we do our own check-ins. We talk about what our challenges are, what we're struggling with, and it may have nothing to do with work. We're talking about what's happening at home, what's happening with our aging parents, so life on life's terms. So we,
life is difficult, and there's great things, but there's a lot of things that are difficult, and you just have to work through them and keep going, showing up.
Yeah. So that's really, really key is, my job, a big part of my job is, I got to raise enough money to keep these gifted guys employed. And, San Diego is not an easy town to make it in. A living wage here is not what it is in other parts of the country, for sure. So, there's it's just kind of criminal that we're not better funded, that,
Well, it's so important to get these boys to be the men that society society needs them to be. families need them to be.
Yeah.
And there should be way more money than probably, what you're getting to be able to support them, because then our society in whole is going to be better.
Yeah. Like our little microcosm here in San Diego, we're in 40 schools, but there's 250 middle schools and high schools in the county. We're in 40.
A lot more boys.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot more boys. Yeah. And, and this too, like this is an elective. Like this is not, these guys don't have to do this. They're choosing to be there. So they're hungry for the support. They don't even know it until they get a taste of it either. Like when we go into a new school, they'll give us like 6 or 8 kids that are really struggling. Like maybe they got gang activity or drug activity, or they've lost a parent or a sibling, or they're acting out, So we start with those guys and we say, welcome to Boys to Men. You may or may not want to be here. And we understand that, you have to be here for the next 6 weeks. So if you'll give us 6 weeks to earn your trust and earn your respect, at the end of that 6 weeks, if you still don't want to be here, you can leave. But if you do want to be here, we want you to invite your friends. So there's this ongoing organic growth that happens because they bring in their friends and those friends bring in friends. And we'll start with 6 or 8. And by the end of the school year, we might have 30. And now we have to run 2 circles because we don't have the bandwidth to facilitate 30 kids in an hour to do a check-in, right? So anyway, so this is a long-term commitment to transformation and change that has evolved and grown and become what it is today based on what it was 29 years ago, which was my son and a bunch of kids on his Little League team that didn't have dads that we took up on that first training. And it was just a little neighborhood thing. And now it's a national movement, international movement. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's the whole thing. The whole story is amazing. How it started, your story, the Boys to Men story. Where do you hope to see Boys to Men,
great,
in 5 years or 10 years?
Yeah. So I'm glad you asked that because, I had the good fortune of meeting with the CEO of National University, and I got to share this story with him. And I talked about our ranch up on Mount Palomar where we do the rites of passage. He was so intrigued by that. He said, I want to see that. He goes, I want to see Legacy Ranch. He goes, and I want to bring the dean of the School of Psychology up there. And I want to bring our communications and public relations director up there. And I want to bring I can't remember what they're called. It's like a chancellor from the Arizona chapter of National. And I said, great. He goes, National University is the largest graduating university of psychology degrees in the country. I want to find a way for our students to get clinical hours by sitting in your circles. And so this is going to be huge. We are negotiating it right now. Our plan is to have those students start showing up in our circles in January for the spring semester. And this will attract younger, more diverse mentors to support our very diverse
and
circles.
Help grow.
Yeah.
Help more boys. I mean, it's absolutely incredible.
Yeah. And it's a win-win. The students get clinical hours. We get younger, more diverse mentors. And they're willing to put somebody in charge to oversee and manage and validate the work and the time. And they've got we have our assessment tools. We have our surveys. They have theirs. We'll be able to, commingle data and really create some wonderful measurable outcomes that may lead to some really some decent funding so that we can get this into all the schools in San Diego County.
Right. Yeah,
that was kind of our goal when Craig and I started this. We every 6th grader has the opportunity to go to 6th grade camp. We thought every 8th grader should have an opportunity to do a Boys to Men rites of passage weekend to create an emotional toolbox for them to navigate high school with. So they go into high school with a better self-awareness and connecting the dots and knowing who they want to be and how they want to show up. And because I mean, look, it's not perfect, but it's we're equipping these guys, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they, a lot of them were starting, at the 0-yard line, where other people are starting at the 20-yard line, and you're making that difference smaller.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's fantastic. So, Joe, this has been such an inspiring conversation. I mean, I love hearing about your organization. Before we finish up, how can people connect with Boys to Men Mentoring Network and get involved as mentor supporters or donors?
boystomen.org. It's all there. BOYSTOMEN.org. No Z, no Roman numeral 2.
All right, do one more time.
BOYSTOMEN. Boystomen.org.
All right. Thank you again, Joe, for joining us and sharing your story.
Kristin.
And thanks to everyone for listening. This has been Mic Check, where we highlight growth stories that matter. Until next time, I'm Kristin Guglielmo. Thank you very much. Thanks again, Joe.